So, today we're playing with the idea of joy. Now, you will have noticed that we're speaking about everything except joy so far today. Joy is actually the pink candle that normally gets lit next week, traditionally in the Advent calendar. But because next week we're having the Christmas service as a candle lighting service, and joy is incorporated in that certainly, I wanted to talk about joy specifically today. We talk often throughout the year about love, but joy is one of those concepts that are a little bit trickier. We say the word joy, but we don't often know what it means. In many ways, it's kind of like faith. It's like, how do you explain it? How do you explain joy? Well, unlucky for you, I don't know the answer. But I want to explore this concept of joy. And part of the reason I wanted to do that today, rather than speak about love, which is the traditional theme for today, is that it ties in with our very last week of speaking about the gifts of imperfection, that is the book that Brene Brown wrote several years ago, and that we've been studying. And so, again, interesting how these universal principles that we speak about as joy in the Christian world is called as something similar in that secular world. Because guess what? It's all the same. We separate religion and secular and dogma. But spiritual principle is universal. And that's the part that we want to understand, is that we can bridge it all if we just come to the fact that what we really care about are the same values. We just sometimes get to them differently. So last week, we looked at letting go of anxiety as a lifestyle and cultivating calm and stillness. And we tied that in with the Advent theme of peace. Well, today, we're looking at two guideposts that Brene Brown identifies in her book of people who live wholehearted lives, and what some of the consistencies that she found in her research about people who are living wholehearted lives. And she found that there were these two really important and unusual for her, being a researcher, traits. One was they cultivated play, and they cultivated rest. And the other was that they cultivated and made a point out of laughter, song, and dance. And so when I read that, I thought, oh, you put laughter, song, and dance with play and rest, that equals joy. And so that's how today's theme ended up being kind of topsy-turvy. So Brene Brown suggests that we let go of exhaustion as a status symbol and productivity as a symbol of our self-worth. She also suggests that we let go of the idea that we need to be cool and always be in control and always look like nothing's going to touch us, in favor of play and rest and laughter and song and dance. When she started doing her research and started trying to find these common themes out of these thousands of people who are wholehearted, she went to one of her friends and she said, you know, these wholehearted people fool around a lot. Her friend said, fool around how? And Brene Brown says, I don't know. They have fun, and I don't know what you call it, they hang out and do fun things. Then she goes on in her book to say, now I look back on that conversation and I think, how did I not know what I was seeing? Was I so personally removed from this concept that I couldn't recognize it? It was play. A critically important component of wholehearted living is play. Well, I don't know about you, but I actually have a hard time with play. I think I mentioned several services ago that my first day of grade 1, I was so mad because I went to school and I expected to be sitting at a desk and doing work and being a student, and instead all we did all day was play. And I went home and I said to my mother that this was not what school was supposed to be about. And I guess at some level that has never changed for me. Somewhere in my DNA, and I'm sure that that is true for everybody else. Why is everybody laughing at my husband? Somewhere along the line, work always has to come before play. The to-do list always has to come before play. Please tell me I'm not alone. Are we not all like that? It's, I will get to the play when, ... I'll have fun if, ... And what Brené Brown found in her research is people who are wholehearted build fun into their schedule because they know how important it is to play. Anybody watch The Big Bang Theory?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So Sheldon gets married and he schedules intimate time with his wife. And it's like, oh yeah, now's the time, let's go. And then she's basically saying, well, is there any time where we might be spontaneous with showing affection to each other? And he sort of thinks about it and is somewhat willing to consider it. But it's out of his comfort zone because he works with schedules. And I don't know why I resonated with that. That's a very disturbing thought, but true nonetheless. Oscar Wilde said something that my dad used to say quite a lot, which is that life is too important to be taken seriously. Zev, a few weeks ago, asked me after a service if I implement everything that I speak about every week. I see people laughing already.
She should have asked me.
And what I said to him is, I try. The whole goal isn't me standing up here to tell you to do it because I do it so well. Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. I think, if anything, the person who's up here doing the speaking is doing the speaking because it's stuff that we need to learn too. And so never ever think that I'm speaking from a place because I've got it. Because I don't. In fact, if anything, it's because I'm getting an insight into what it could be and what it could look like. And I'm sharing that with you partly to cement it for myself. And as I said, one of those most difficult challenges is play. And yet, here's what I go back to, which is the story of Jesus when he's wandering, walking the streets, and he sits down, and the children come to him, and they all want to be with him. And the disciples like so many of us, would say, no, leave the man alone. He needs his space. This is for adults only, or any other one of 1,000 different messages we might send children that says, you're not in this place, you don't belong here. And what Jesus says is, let the children come to me, and don't stop them. For it is to such as these that the kingdom of heaven belongs. Now, when we spoke earlier about metaphysical interpretation, you've got Jesus is our highest self. You've got the disciples, our strong thoughts, our judgmental thoughts sometimes, but certainly the thoughts that say this is how it should be done. Saying, children, go away. And the children represent that youthful, open energy, wanting to learn, wanting to experience, wanting to be part of that highest self, wanting to be invited into that highest self. And Jesus, our highest self, says, come and play with me. When you come without any of that should, need to do, I ought to be, the list is this long, I can't wait. When you get rid of all of that, what Jesus is saying is come, just come as a little child, play with me. That's where the kingdom of heaven resides. That's where joy resides. June Burnham, I didn't ask you permission for this story, but I know you won't mind, was telling me that one of her grandchildren, she needed to get on the phone with one of her grandchildren because they were 5 or 6 years old, and they were worried that when they got to heaven, it would be boring. And I just popped into my head. Laugh, there you go. Anyway, what is play? The whole purpose of play is that it has no purpose. If it has a purpose, it's not really play. It's just work masquerading as play. And so the whole idea with play is just to do it because it's fun to do. Dr. Stuart Brown is the person who is the founder of the National Institute for Play. And he suggests that the opposite of play is not work, it's depression. The opposite of play is not work, it's depression. And in today's culture, where our self-worth is tied to our net worth, and everything that we base our worthiness on may be to do with how much we produce, the idea of spending time on activity that has no purpose can in itself seem stress-inducing. Can for me. So how do we do play? The answer is we give ourselves permission. There's an old poem written by Jenny Joseph called "When I Am Old, I Shall Wear Purple." I think this is where the Red Hat Society may have been founded from, is this poem. When I am an old woman, I shall wear purple with a red hat which doesn't go and doesn't suit me. And I shall spend my pension on brandy and summer gloves and satin sandals and say, we've no money for butter. I shall sit on the pavement when I'm tired and gobble up samples in shops and press alarm bells and run my stick along the public railings and make up for the sobriety of my youth. I shall go out in my slippers in the rain and pick the flowers in other people's gardens and learn to spit. You can wear terrible shirts and grow more fat and eat 3 pounds of sausages at a go, or only bread and pickles for a week, and hoard pens and pencils and beer mats and things in boxes. But now, we must have clothes that keep us dry and pay our rent and not swear in the street and set a good example for the children. We must have friends to dinner and read the papers. But maybe I ought to practice a little now, so people who know me are not too shocked and surprised when suddenly I am old and start to wear purple. Loretta LaRoche, the comedian who is so inspiring and so funny, suggests that life is short and we should wear our party pants. That's part of why I'm wearing this today, is because why not? Why does it have to be serious? Then, we are not weak for needing to rest. That same Protestant work ethic, if you will, that says you got to keep working until it's done. You got to keep working just one more hour, one more 10 minutes, one more, even though your body and your mind might be craving some downtime. We have this tendency, I have this tendency to soldier on, to get it done, because when it's done I can rest. But you know, that's not true, because when it's done there's just something else that's going to need to be done. And so the goal isn't to get it done, it's to make space for what we need in the midst of that. To become rest aware, perhaps. And so, ask yourself, will this really matter if I leave it for a few hours? Ask yourself, what is the BS belief system that is holding me from this idea that I can go and have a nap? Ask yourself how important it really is to keep going. Don't sweat the small stuff. And so, Mark Twain said, dance like no one is watching. Love like you've never been hurt. Sing like nobody is listening. And live like it's heaven on earth. Go back to that childlike spirit. Walt and I, last night, watched the movie Florence Foster Jenkins. Has anybody seen that? Based on a true story of a wealthy woman in New York who loved music. And her dream was to be an opera singer and to have a concert at Carnegie Hall. And the fact that she could not hold a note was immaterial. Absolutely immaterial. And what started out out to be something which was kind of a laughing stock. In the end, it became something that was inspirational to other people because it was her standing in her courage and her passion, in her love for music. And one of the things she said, and this is a real quote from the real Florence Foster Jenkins in 1944. "People can say I can sing, but they'll never say I didn't sing." And that, my friends, is the goal. Who cares if you can't sing? Who cares if you can't dance? If you can put one foot in front of the other, and sometimes not even that much, if you can move your arms, you can dance. Universal laughter is the universal language. It doesn't matter where you are. If you smile and laugh, the language barrier disappears because it is a human trait. And so, this Christmas, I invite you to play with this idea of playing. Maybe come up with a couple of things that you are going to do that are absolutely purposeless. And if you find difficulty giving yourself permission to do it, as I do, find somebody who can hold you accountable and walk with you in that uncomfortable journey. And just tell them, hey, I need you just to ask me in a few days whether or not I took time to play. Did I take time to rest? And what are you going to do? Joy begins here. Come as a child. The kingdom of heaven is within you, and it is not boring. I do bless you and wish you a joy-filled Christmas and a joy-filled life. God bless you.